And we welcome you to another edition of This Is Wrestling. It is Lee Versage along the one and only Zach friggin' McGibbon. Zach, lots to talk about, but more importantly, how are you? I know things have been happening in Belleville. I think Belleville opened and then it closed and then it opened again, and you had to be there for the openings, and then I think it closed, and then a couple of people got there in September. It's like 3 new people have moved in. You got to cover that. So you've been busy.
Yes, I have. I've been scrambling around the last little bit. For those that don't know, in our area, we have a by-election coming up this week.
That would be everybody listening.
So unless you are a big follower of provincial politics or Ontario politics, you may not know. But yes, it's a big by-election that's happening in our area. It's taking place on Thursday. And so all of a sudden, the province has had all these announcements that they've wanted to make in our area. So we've just kind of been going around covering those announcements. And plus, we got a new police chief and deputy police chief in our area as well. So a lot has been happening in the region, and it's going to continue to be happening up until Thursday. And we'll see how the election results play out there. But it's been back and forth this last little bit. But like I always say with this podcast, I always enjoy this part once my day is over, the recording part. I love giving the takes. I love giving the thoughts about pro wrestling. So I'm looking forward to this episode.
And peeling back the curtain a little bit, I've tried to send you a bunch of stuff that I really wanted to talk about. And it really all is WCW 2000 and maybe WCW 1999, with a number of situations with refs actually counting with nobody's shoulders on the mat.
That's right.
More than one.
It's incredible to watch that. Kevin Nash is in there. It's an endless amount of bodies that are going in the ring, and the humble Kevin Nash just getting all these pinfall victories despite not making a pinfall. It's just WCW 99, 2000, especially in a nutshell. You just look and you're wondering what the heck's going on, and nothing makes sense.
It's actually crazy watching some of these videos with refs counting.
Yes.
Nobody's down. Nobody's shoulders are on the mat. Nothing is happening, and they're counting to 3.
It's like, what's going on? Why are they counting it? My only guess is that they were running close on TV time and they had to get this angle in, I guess. So the other one you sent me, which was before 99, 2000, but it's still a classic WCW moment, is WCW imitating the Nancy Kerrigan angle.
Yes.
For Hulk Hogan. Oh, my knee, brother. My knee hurts, dude. That was also a very funny to watch, and them all taking seriously, huddling around the Hulkster, wondering what happened, who attacked him, the masked man that attacked him. Oh, my knee, brother. Can't drop the leg if I don't have my knee, dude.
No. And then in the caption of that, it says, Ric Flair revealed in his book that Hogan refused to drop the title as planned in the Flair versus Hulk trilogy. And I just thought that you needed to know that, because he didn't have any creative say. He had no creative say whatsoever, Zach.
That's right. Brother, I didn't say anything, dude. They told me what to do, brother. And I just did it, dude. Just happened to win a lot, brother.
Okay, so this is kind of like an odd week in professional wrestling where there's really not all that much going on. After some big shows and Bash at Berlin and All In and All Out, and we're kind of on the just in a time that it's going to gear up for what's coming up later on in the year. So there's just a couple of things I want to cherry pick here, and we'll kind of bounce back and forth from WWE to AEW. But one of the things that I wanted to get to was in AEW, we had a tag team gauntlet match for the winners to get a chance at Grand Slam, which is coming up as we record this, I believe, in 9 days.
Yep.
And the winners of the Casino Gauntlet match were Kyle Fletcher and Will Ospreay. And I thought that was really interesting because I'm just wondering, how much they can use Will Ospreay with every other title that the company possibly has when he's going to win the TBS Women's title, and make sure that he has every title except for the world title.
Yes.
Do we like this? Is this intriguing to you that Will Ospreay, now the international champion once again, now is tagging in a tag team title match with Kyle Fletcher against the Young Bucks? Do we like this?
In some ways, yes. In some ways, I think this will be a path to kind of kickstart a story here with Fletcher and Ospreay and maybe Takeshita and everything involving the Don Callis family there. I think this could be a way to get there. And plus, you look at it on paper, the match that they will have against the Bucks at Grand Slam, on paper, that looks to be a really fun match that should be good. I know the Bucks haven't had the best performances in this gimmick in the last little bit, but it's very hard to have a bad match with Will Ospreay. And we know the Bucks can be capable of having high quality matches. So I would be very surprised if it's any worse than good for that match. So on that aspect, I liked it. It is kind of an interesting path. On the other hand, I think they've kind of been overusing this gauntlet stipulation. While I like it, and I think they should have that as sort of their specialty AEW match that makes them stand out from everybody else, them using the tag team gauntlet, I think they should shelve that, especially with... It was pretty much a look into the depth of the AEW tag team division and where it stands right now. And you kind of realize that this is not the same tag team division that we've been watching when AEW first started 5 years ago. It's not as good. There's still good tag teams, obviously. You got the Bucks, you've got FTR, you've got Grizzled Young Veterans that are now in there. There are other tag teams that are catching some attention, like the Outrunners. I'm a big Outrunners guy. I enjoy the gimmick. Yeah, that was all me. That promo video they showed on Collision of them doing the 80s montage in the gym was fantastic. That hit right into my core. But nonetheless, the depth of the division is pretty lacking, and I thought the Gauntlet match actually did the opposite effect of showing where it's at right now. And that could have been an interesting match to introduce a surprise tag team. We've been hearing so much about where the Motor City Machine Guns will go, and if this would be a spot where the Hurt Business with Bobby Lashley and MVP and whoever else would be a part of that group in AEW would show up, but that didn't happen either. So I didn't like the match type that they used to do it. I thought it actually had the opposite effect of what they were going for. From a singular storyline standpoint of where it could go and where it could lead to with Ospreay, it could lead to some interesting stuff, and we finally get some sort of a payoff for the Don Callis family stuff. But the way they got there, I could have asked for something better. There was a lot of that on last week's Dynamite, I thought.
I would agree with that, and I think using Will Ospreay in places where that. Like, do you think they're winning the tag team titles?
No, I don't think they're winning the belts.
Right. So I don't either. And I don't like using Will Ospreay in things I kind of know are going to happen where he's going to lose. I just don't think that's good for him. I think he's been in spots earlier this year where that's happened as well. But that's just me. I think you should treat the guy like a world champion. And I just find he's getting messed up in all of these other things. And it's like, yeah, I'm kind of excited, the four of them, for a good match, but are they really, like, is this going to be Kenny Omega and Adam Page and tag team champions and singles guys that that really are tag champs. I think they could surprise you and put the belts on them and then have a little dissension in the family with the belts and like, okay. But more than likely, as you said, they're not going to win. And so I just don't like using Will Ospreay in that spot. I also want to ask you about Nigel McGuinness. And we've talked a lot about him over the last couple of weeks, kind of being involved in bigger angles. But this was just kind of, okay, Nigel is going to go out there, and I guess because Moxley and Darby Allin are now going to wrestle, like, I don't quite understand the logic of Darby Allin giving up a title shot. Because it was sort of, I didn't like AEW's Dynamite presentation on Wednesday because I didn't love the fact that at the beginning, it seemed like Bryan Danielson was not going to be ready to go. And that's why Moxley was going to wrestle Darby. And then all of a sudden, Nigel McGuinness is in the ring, and now he's wrestling Bryan Danielson, which makes the logic of Darby Allin giving up a title shot to put it on the line against Jon Moxley. That makes no sense. So you're going to have to explain to me a couple of things. Darby Allin's logic and what I thought was a very underwhelming Nigel McGuinness getting in the ring, because I was excited for this. And I thought it was very underwhelming, him getting in the ring and kind of standing there and talking about Bryan Danielson, and all of a sudden he's wrestling him.
Feels like a rush job, Lee. At first I was thinking, oh my God, we're getting McGuinness and Danielson at Grand Slam. This is happening in a few weeks. But then as I thought about it more, as you mentioned, the logic holes that came out of this made no sense. Absolutely no sense. I at first was buying into the explanation earlier in the show when they were saying that Danielson wouldn't be able to compete because of the angle, which I thought, great. That's a good way to sell that angle that they did at the pay-per-view. And then you have Moxley go out there and say, you know, you're a guy that likes to wrestle. I want your title opportunity. I've been calling you out. And Darby's the sort of guy that wants to wrestle and do that sort of stuff. So all of that made sense to me going up to it. And then they just did this angle with McGuinness coming out in the ring and talking about how he's got a match with Danielson, and if he's willing to show up, they kept putting those little keywords in there. If he's willing to show up, if he's ready to go, we're going to have the match. I was just dumbfounded at this. It was this giant glaring plot hole. There's 27 writers back there. Did not one person pick up on the fact that said, hey, maybe we shouldn't do this. Maybe we should, address this giant plot hole. I just, it's one of the things that frustrates me about this company is because they are good. They can be good, but they could be so much better than this. But they've got way too many people in the back that are all trying to pitch their stuff. And you get all this, like, a conglomeration of all these different ideas being presented onto this show. And it's the whole thing of all these writers back there. And so now you've got this giant plot hole, and I already could hear what our AEW superfan is going to mention, is that on Collision, McGuinness on commentary mentioned, Darby was under the influence or something like that. Like, he thought that Moxley tricked him into thinking that a title match wasn't going to happen. So he, tricked him into putting him into this title match. But then why would Tony Khan agree to that?
Right.
Tony Khan's the babyface authority figure that you booked. You put it on TV that he's the babyface and the Young Bucks are the heels. So why can't Tony Khan just reverse that decision? It makes no sense. This is why I get so frustrated with this company. Again, 27 writers are back there, Lee. 27. I'm not making it up. Tony Khan said it in a presser that there's 27 people back there, or so, quote unquote, giving ideas back there. Can somebody there be a consistency writer and just kind of look at what's going on, or get rid of like 25 of those people that are back there? It boggled my mind, and I shouldn't be this upset, but it's because it's Nigel McGuinness versus Bryan Danielson, and we haven't seen this match in 15 years, and this is the way that we're getting to it in this rush job. It's why I'm frustrated. I'm not going to get overcome with the idea of I'm finally going to get Nigel McGuinness versus Bryan Danielson if the way that we got there was a bunch of bull, and it made Darby look stupid. It's frustratingly. That's all I can really say.
Okay, and so that's kind of what I wanted to get to. It's like we've all been waiting, and when I saw Nigel McGuinness in the ring in London, I'm like, I don't know, but okay, like let's go for this. Like he's clearly coming back, and this is how we got there, and that's the point. This isn't just any angle. This is like for, true diehard wrestling fans, they've been waiting for this for a very, very long time. And it all came about because Moxley came out and demanded a match with Darby, who had a title shot, and Darby just gave it up for no reason whatsoever. And then Nigel was like, well, okay, I think I should wrestle him. Okay. What? What? This is your world title. Like, what? And so the match between Darby and Moxley is getting more of a pump up than the actual McGuinness Bryan Danielson match.
Yes. If they just did that McGuinness Danielson match, and McGuinness went out there and said, once Bryan Danielson is cleared, that it's going to be on not even a pay-per-view. If it was a Dynamite after Grand Slam or something after that, I can at least buy into that, right? Because logically, the story that you have laid out here about the bag angle and everything in between, it makes sense for it to be past that. But they did it on Grand Slam all in one show. It just, again, I want to strongly emphasize, there are 25 people back there, at least. 25, and not one person back there raised their hand in the booking room and said, hey, we've got a problem here, TK. We've got this giant glaring plot hole, and we're going to rush this match in 2 weeks on Grand Slam. And I don't care. Again, another thing that they'll bring up is like, well, McGuinness has been teasing the Danielson stuff, for the last year on commentary, right? And they're going to attribute that to a build, right? Fine. But when you've established on the storyline already that Danielson is out, and he's going to be out, and Darby can't challenge him, that's when it gets all screwed up. So all that build, quote unquote, that you wanted to do, it gets nullified because we're talking about this instead. So, just frustrating. They could be so much better than this.
Well, that's the thing. Like, they have some really good things, as you said, and the company's good. It's just, you can't let them off the hook when they don't do good things just because you like them. I like AEW more than I like WWE right now, but you can't let it off the hook.
No.
And so, I don't know. Like, I just don't understand a lot of it, to be honest with you. And I don't know how I feel about like Moxley coming out and Darby Allin's the number one contender, but Christian's the number one contender, but Moxley wants to be the number one contender. Nigel McGuinness is actually wrestling Bryan Danielson. It's like, I don't know that you have to complicate it that much. I understand that there's, a little intrigue and you don't always have to do just one person is the number one contender. I get that. But you actually have two number one contenders because Darby won the number one contender and Christian has a contract that says that he's the number one contender, but Nigel McGuinness is wrestling Bryan Danielson and Jon Moxley's in there kind of walking around like he owns the company now.
I know.
And it's like,
God,
I get that it's coming at it from all angles and you can present it that there's, you look around and everywhere you see is a new contender, but then don't label somebody number one contender Don't have a match for him to win, to say I'm the number one contender, and then just giving it up to face Jon Moxley. Why? Like it.
If only Lee, if only there was a ranking system of some sort. Something to kind of keep track of things, right? And make sure that the booking is kept honest about how they're doing these storylines. And then you could follow along and you could see Jon Moxley rise through the ranks, and you could see Nigel McGuinness rise through the ranks and try and go after Darby Allin's number one contendership spot. If only there was some sort of ranking system like that. Oh, well, too bad we haven't had that in AEW.
Okay, so all that said, I'm still looking forward to Grand Slam. But
yes, that's the funny thing. It's like the matches on the card look good, but you know, you had always told me with some of the WWE PLEs when we would review them, when I would say, yeah, and you know, the booking's not great, but this match on the card looks good, and blah blah blah, and you would say, no, Zach, you can't let them off the hook like that.
That's right.
You can't let them off the hook, and
so you can't let AEW off the hook.
No, I can't let them get off the hook on this.
Know. I want to be excited about Roderick Strong and Hook, but I'm not. I don't think they've done a very good build towards it.
It's very lackluster.
So, yeah, there's just a lot of things that I want to be more excited about than just looking at the card again and going, oh, well, this should be good because the people are good. It's the same WWE thing. Speaking of the WWE, I'm not a rocket scientist. I mean, I put up with you every week, so that makes me not a rocket scientist. But I'm going to read you something here, and I'm just going... I just don't understand sometimes people, okay? So this is a quote, and I think you'll probably get it, but if you don't, we'll figure it out pretty soon.
Yeah.
I've been consistently working since WrestleMania. The travel is brutal. It's very, very brutal. And the crazy thing about this isn't even half of what they used to do for travel. The fact that we travel internationally and then we have to turn around and people have to go to Raw and their clocks have to be on point to whatever time change they're in right now, I think that's crazy. You have to go out there, you have to perform, you have to be 100% in front of all these people, regardless of whether you're jet lagged, if you're beat up from a week tour like we just had in Germany, and then have to go off and have a PLE that Saturday. This is very different for me because I was so used to working 1 day a week, maybe 2 days a week, traveling on the same day and leaving the next morning as early as I can. Yes, you take all the bumps. Yes, you go in the ring. Yes, all this stuff. But travel is the biggest part of it all. Do you know who that is?
I believe I saw this quote earlier today. Is that Jade Cargill speaking?
What in the world would possess you to say this as a person who works like 2 minutes a night and watching everybody else actually bust their ass while you, I don't know, you bust your ass in the back looking good, but you don't bust your ass in the ring. You just got there and the travel is cut back and you're complaining about being in Europe and having to go and be on TV for 4 minutes back in the US? Like, are you kidding me? I read this. I'm like, I didn't like her to begin with. I think she's so overrated. And now this makes me really dislike her. It might be like, we always want, as media people and fans, we want people to tell the truth. And I get that. And this is Jade telling the truth. But man, this is really stupid to say. This is just dumb. And I just know that if I'm running the company and this is the person that I've put, don't know what her contract is, but it was for a lot, and brought her in and making her look like a superstar above all the other people that have actually busted their ass. and this is how you're talking. I just think if I'm running the company, I'm like, what are we doing pushing this person? What are we doing? Anyway, and maybe this is just me. Maybe you have no problem with this, but as somebody who really hasn't busted her ass for 10 or 15 years going up and down the roads, and like, I could take this from somebody else who's done it for 20 years and says I'm not as young as I used to be, and being in Germany for a PLE and having to be back on Raw and working a 20-minute match that, 2 days later. Okay. Like, do you want to hear about travel from hockey players when it was 4,000 kilometers for Florida and Edmonton on their private jets with sleeping quarters, a steak or shrimp, and like the most luxurious travel ever in the world? I don't. Anyway, nothing bothers me more than people complaining about traveling in a business that involves travel.
I always get a kick out of when the wrestlers tweet out their frustrations against an airline. That always gets a kick out of me for some reason, because it always happens every once in a while. The biggest people that would do that were Jericho and Alexa Bliss. Would always complain at the airlines about how they were treated. It was always like once in a blue moon you would see that tweet. In terms of this, the comments here from Jade Cargill, I mean, we've known for a long time that the travel has been brutal for WWE. This isn't exactly new information that's being revealed here. Like, you could talk with wrestling veterans of the past of how they would work, 2 times a night and travel to different towns and territories for house shows back in the 80s. Obviously, it's not as much of a travel now, and also it sounds like they're going to cut back even more on some of the house shows that they'll be doing next year. I see your point where, you have somebody like a Jade Cargill who's mainly been used right now as the person that gets the hot tag from somebody in a tag match and gets all the heat, and doesn't really have to work that much in her matches. And how you could read that quote and think, man, it's like of all the things to be having an issue with, the way that you're being booked right now and the travel, I don't know. It seems like a pretty good gig. And like what you said with travel between the Oilers and the Panthers during the Stanley Cup Finals, and I don't think we heard that one time from the players about the travel. I could be wrong on that.
No, we did. We heard it from the media that were complaining about it.
Yep. And so, all that to say, I mean, I get it. I'm not saying I don't understand where she's coming from, because I totally understand where she's coming from. But this is something that's been known for a while. I don't know why this is all of a sudden a shocking revelation to her, where it's like, oh my God, all of a sudden the travel's bad. Maybe it's just the reality kind of hit throughout the travel, realizing, going back and forth.
Even if it's true, you just got there.
Like, yeah, it's true.
Shut up. Wrestle. Have some really good matches. Like, stop talking about this. Let's get to Monday Night Raw, WWE SmackDown, as they're going through this transition period, right? Where, they're debuting SmackDown on the USA Network was on Friday night, their debut.
Yep.
And kicked it off with a big steel cage match, Cody Rhodes and Solo Sikoa. They also had the 5th match of Andrade and Carmelo Hayes. I'll tell you, Zach. Well, I'll tell you that the cage match was 16 minutes and 20 seconds long. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'll then ask you what you think the total time of wrestling was on SmackDown, knowing how long the first match was.
Oh God. It's probably less than an hour, the way that they do the shows there. A 2-hour show. Let's go with 45 minutes. I'll be optimistic and say 45 minutes.
Okay, I like that. You're being very optimistic.
Yeah.
Let's go with 37.
Oh, I was over. Darn.
Okay. But let's go with 37. Well, 16 of that was over by, I don't know, 8:25. Like, how long did it take? They ran a package for Cody, and then, of course, he takes forever to get to the ring. And, like, I get it. So let's give them 10 minutes. 10 minutes before that first match started. I think that's probably, I'm giving them too much credit. But let's give them 10 minutes. And then tell you that at 8:26, there was only 21 more minutes of wrestling the entire night.
My God.
Like what? Anyway, I was interested because, they're saluting their former partners in Fox, but welcoming USA, and there's new graphics, and they had a couple of new like camera shots, and they were doing some new things, and I'm just like, oh my God. The only thing, because I didn't think Andrade and Carmelo in this one was very good. I thought it was okay, but I've seen better matches from them in this, like, now best of 5. The best thing that ever happened all night was that to make the hot tag, that Kevin Owens actually went out of the ring in the corner, the opposite corner, ran around the ring, dove back into the ring right beside Randy Orton, and made the hot tag. I'm like, I've never seen that before. That was awesome. That's what every person should do all the time. Instead of trying to get across the ring and the wrestlers grabbing their legs and preventing them and getting a shot in, just go outside the ring and run around and go back in where your partner is. Perfect.
Smart.
I just didn't like this show, and Cody said that he was done. So you're going to make you're going to have to help me understand the logic for Darby Allin. You're going to have to make me understand it for Cody Rhodes. Cody Rhodes, after beating Solo Sikoa in the match and after the match, said he is done with the bloodline. 90 minutes later, he's signing a contract for a tag team match at Bad Blood. Why? What happened? Tell me what happened in this 90 minutes that made Cody change his mind.
Maybe he saw the dollar signs on the contract offer on when he signed, and maybe said, "Oh, maybe I could do one more match with the Bloodline and make some money."
Then Cody, tell me, you got offered 7 digits to do this one match, so you're back in.
Yeah, that would be like, oh, you know what? It's hard to turn down a 7-digit figure.
Fine.
Yeah.
Just give, like, this is the thing about wrestling. Tell me what's going on. As a fan, just tell me. I don't even care if your logic is stupid. It's your logic. I might not agree with it, but at least you're telling me what it is. Darby Allin gave us 0 explanation for why he gave up a world title match at a major event to wrestle Jon Moxley instead. 0. Cody Rhodes, after beating Solo Sikoa for the 2nd time, said, I'm done with the bloodline. He said it in the ring. He said it in the promo afterwards. And 90 minutes later, he put his name on a contract. I have no idea why. He didn't tell us. Nobody told us. I don't even know why Cody came out.
Yeah.
If he's done with the bloodline and Roman Reigns is fighting with the bloodline and Roman Reigns is in the ring going, it's his ring, his show, his WWE, blah, 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 blah. That is bloodline stuff. Why are you walking back out? You just said you were done with them. There's just no logic.
Yeah. And that's just my big issue with a lot of the TV right now, just across wrestling, is that there seems to be a complacency right now when it comes to storylines, both in WWE and AEW, that has just been aggravating. And all I ask is for some form of logic. And AEW used to do that when they were starting up. Now they've gotten complacent. WWE has always been complacent. They might be a little bit better under Triple H when it comes to filling up plot holes, but they've always been complacent when it comes to this stuff, when it comes to telling stories on their television. Because a lot of the times the stories that they tell aren't these overly complicated, woven, deep lore storylines, unless you want to include the bloodline in there. It's usually pretty simple, basic, we getting to the next point of the storytelling. While AEW used to do a little bit more of the in-depth stuff, but now as it goes along and once they eventually announce this new TV deal, I think they're also going to get into a bit of a complacency here. So all I ask is for a little bit of logic. A good logic, actually. You know what? I just want good. You know, like I don't. No more complacency.
Just something.
Something.
Any logic is fine for me. Any logic at all.
At least they tried with the Darby stuff with Nigel McGuinness giving the explanation on Collision, but it was still dumb as all hell. But at least they tried. You know, I bet you they heard all the pushback from that angle on Dynamite and said, "Oh, we better, explain this." But WWE, they'll just kind of trudge forward, and I don't know. Does Cody partnering with Roman Reigns excite you, Lee?
Nope.
It doesn't excite me. I have a feeling they could be leaning towards a third match between these two at some point, maybe even at Mania.
Yeah,
as like,
I told you this. No, I told you this.
I thought the way that they did those angles with The Rock on leading up to the last Mania match, it's like, well, it seems like Rock is kind of implementing some stuff here so that he could face Cody next year. But it sounds to me more and more, Lee, and maybe this is not discussed enough in my mind, but I think there is some sort of a little power struggle going on in WWE between Hunter and Dwayne Johnson. Both want to get their creative ideas out there, and they're both trying to one-up each other. I don't think it's getting talked about enough, because we're being led one way, and then the TV with Rock is leading another way. I don't know. There's something wrong. There's something fishy going on here, Lee, and it's not being discussed enough. But anyways, even if they do a third match, like, I don't know, I was satisfied with the first two. I don't really need to see a third time between these two competitors. I don't see this as a defining feud a la Rock Austin or, Hogan Warrior, if you want to include that. However many opponents Cena has had during his career. I don't see this as one of those defining. Brett Shawn, I don't see it as this defining feud.
You don't, but unfortunately, Zach,
they do. They do.
And it's going to go down in history like it was.
Yep. I will not allow that to happen. I will not allow that to happen.
But that's exactly where it's going to go.
Yep.
Because there is nobody else. If you want to continue Cody's babyface run and have him in the ring against somebody while Roman is facing Rock at WrestleMania, you better be bringing in somebody new. Who in the blue hell is that going to be that's going to go up against Cody Rhodes at WrestleMania? If it's not The Rock or Roman, because they're wrestling each other. I don't know who that is. And I keep seeing somehow that Randy Orton's name is being tossed around.
Oh, God.
And I'm like, oh, my God.
Oh, God.
Anyway, let's get on to what I think, what we all want to talk about from Monday Night Raw. And that was Pure Fusion Collective losing.
Of course. That's what everybody's talking about from Raw.
I don't know. And look, you sent me a list of names from a Chris Jericho excerpt out of a book from Vince McMahon about his move, and there have been I don't know, 50 names on this.
Yes, for those that don't know, Jericho was sent a list of names to rename the Lion Tamer when he was in WCW, which ended up being the Walls of Jericho. But there's like a bunch of names in here.
Yeah, which you sent it to me, and some of them are really funny, especially Jericho's comments about the funny ones.
Yes,
like they're not just bad; they're like super bad.
They're awful.
But there are some really good ones.
Yeah,
on the list too, and I'm like, well, who came up with those ones too? Like, if I came up with a list of 20, you might not like all 20. That's fine.
Yeah.
There are some good ones. I actually really like the Jericho.
The Jericho? The Jericho was also another one I saw.
I didn't like that one.
The one that made me laugh is the Embarrasser. And then in brackets, it says, the move is pretty degrading, which got a pop out of me. I'm not going to lie. It's like, I would hope it would if it's called the Embarrasser.
I know.
Yeah, anyway. Some of these were not great.
Yeah, some of them are not great, but I think if you create a list of 50 potential names, that some of them are just not going to be great.
Yeah. Symbol of Salvation.
The Symbol of Salvation.
Yeah. Apocalypse Now, not the movie. Final Countdown. Journey might sue WWE if that ended up happening.
The Jericonium of Pain.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Oh. Another one I really enjoyed, Big Finish.
Big Finish. I really like the double leg vice of torment.
Imagine having to yell that out on commentary. The double leg vice of torment is locked in.
There are a couple though that I didn't mind, and I didn't mind the Jericho. I didn't mind that one at all, and I didn't mind. Oh, I hated Time Killer. Oh, that's so bad.
Yeah,
it's just so bad. And you see like some of the names, like Twist of Fate is on this, and obviously that got used. Doomsday Device, that got used afterwards. So clearly there was. I kind of popped for Cloverleaf 2000, but I did not pop for the Whammer Jammer.
I just saw that too, the Whammer Jammer.
Okay, so Bret Hart out on Monday Night Raw in Calgary. I thought they did a pretty good job. Jackie Redmond's got a lot of ties to hockey, and so she did a pretty good job with the Goudreaus. I thought that was well done by the WWE. As good as they possibly could do. And, Sami Zayn also coming out in a Goudreau jersey. But what did you make of Bret being on Monday Night Raw and being there with Gunther?
I enjoyed what Gunther had to say. I thought the promo that he was cutting is like, when I grew up, you were one of my favorites. You were second favorite. And I thought, oh, here we go. Here's the Shawn Michaels line.
Shawn Michaels, yeah.
And when he said Bill Goldberg, I'm not going to lie, I fell back in my seat a little bit. Wasn't expecting that. And I just enjoyed Bret's facial reactions. Just, you could tell there was a little smile on his face when he said that. He was having a good time. I enjoy Bret. I know people will say he's bitter and all that, but man, the guy has gone through, he saw his brother die in the ring, and it caused a whole bunch of strife within his family. He got screwed out of the company that he was on top for many, many years, and it took them forever to get, resolved. One of the people he hated the most in the world before they reconciled, and Shawn Michaels was getting all the glory when they left. The man, and plus with Bill Goldberg, it was a reckless kick that knocked out Bret and ended his career. And since then, he's had a bunch of different head injuries. And I remember he's had a stroke while he was riding his bicycle. So the man has had a rough life. he's earned being a little bit bitter. I'm not gonna lie. So it was nice to see him kind of laughing and having a good time, because he was obviously there just to be, you know, they're in Calgary and Brett is obviously associated with Calgary. But I got more of a pop when, I don't know if you saw the video backstage of Triple H talking with Bret Hart and saying, "Hey, it's good to see you back here, Bret. Glad to have you on the show." And I could just see it in Bret's eyes that he still does not like Triple H.
Yeah.
Like he was like, "Oh, it was good to be here." You know, he was very short and curt with what he wanted to say. And knowing that there was a camera in front and Triple H is like, "Oh, it's good to have you back on Raw, buddy. No hard feelings." So.
Yeah, I didn't love it. Yeah, and Brett's not the same.
No.
And you know, that's okay. But I don't know. I wish the Goldberg thing got me a little bit. And I'm glad Gunther was out there because he can carry a segment.
Yep.
And Brett doesn't have to be the star of the segment. So I thought that was well done. I thought Raw was awful.
But don't worry, Lee. It's going to be fixed once it goes to 2 hours in October.
Yeah, but isn't it going back to 3 in Netflix in January?
Potentially, yes. It's only temporary. They're doing 2 hours for the rest of the year until they get ready for Netflix.
Which I'm looking forward to be honest with you. So I'll be one of those that really does look forward to that.
Yeah. Trust me, I'm happy that they're going to 2 hours. I wish they would stay at 2 hours. But I don't think Netflix bought into a 2 hour show. I think they bought into a 3 hour show. And I don't know about you, Lee, but I've been getting asked a lot of questions about what WWE on Netflix would look like in terms of a streaming component. Yep. I gotta say this: if people think it's going to be commercial free, I think they're in for a rude awakening, because there's going to be commercials on that Monday Night Raw on Netflix telecast. Like, I'm fairly confident that they are going to emulate a lot of what NFL Thursday Night Football is doing on Amazon Prime, where they just have it as a similar telecast. They may not have a set end date, a set end time where it's like, 8 to 11 or anything like that. They could go a little bit over, a little bit under, however they feel, but there's going to be commercials on there. I want people to get prepared for that. And plus for us Canadians, we'll not only get Raw, we'll get SmackDown, and we'll get all the PLEs here in Canada. And NXT, I think, as well, is coming onto Netflix. So that's coming up. But enjoy the 2 hour Raws while it lasts, I say, because I think this is just a temporary thing to try and fill out the rest of their TV contract. And USA already has a bunch of WWE programming for the rest of the year. And why, continue to promote a 3 hour show? And you get some good PR press for saying it's going to 2 hours during our time. And so I think that's where it kind of ended up.
So they are going to have Drew McIntyre and CM Punk in Hell in a Cell coming up. Does that do it for you? Do you like that again?
My interest in this feud has kind of been dwindling as it continues on. I know they broke apart that bracelet and they stuffed it in CM Punk's mouth there to kind of continue the feud. Because let me tell you, Lee, Punk is trying to do everything possible to try and avoid having to bring up that bracelet anymore. It's kind of funny the dichotomy that's happening with that. But, I guess I don't have the same passions for this feud that I did when it was first happening in WWE and all the matches that have happened since then. I think they could go out there and have a good match. I like both guys. I don't know. This feud, the way that they've taken it, has just not been for me. It's not where I thought it would go with Punk, and not where I thought it would go with McIntyre. It's just not my sort of feud.
Yeah, I feel a couple ways. I think I was excited, but as you said, it's kind of dwindled in the last little while. Past SummerSlam, and then it's strap match, and it's like, okay, now they're wrestling Hell in a Cell, and I just wonder where we're going from this. Like,
Yeah.
is Punk gonna get another victory here in Hell in a Cell? I'm guessing so, but I don't know how you keep both guys hot, because I'm going to tell you, I think you're going to need both guys. So I just don't like. I don't. I guess it's good. I don't know where it's going to end up.
Yeah.
By the time people hear this, Raw will probably have already happened. But I do want to ask you on. I find this interesting. The World Tag Team Champions, the Judgment Day, are facing the New Day in defending the titles. How long do you think it's been since they did?
Oh, I remember seeing this stat. It's been a while. Are you talking about the tag title defense of?
Yeah.
I don't think they even defended on TV, have they?
It's been 80 days.
Oh, jeez.
80.
8-0.
They won the belts. JD McDonough has had a World Tag Team Championship belt for almost 3 months. I've literally never seen him defend it. 80 days since they've been defended on TV or at a PLE. That is something, Zach. And just another big hole. Right?
Yep.
Like, just another big hole. For what they do with some of these. It's just like they'll use them, and then they'll just stash people away for a while, and it's like, I kind of thought Damian Priest and Finn Balor were in a feud. But is it Dominic Mysterio and Damian Priest that are in a feud? I don't know. I don't know the answer.
Yeah. This really feels like a lackluster period when it comes to the build of the storylines right now from both companies. I just look at this and I'm like, man, we there's got to be something better here. Some company has got to have something better in the chamber here that they're willing to do, because this just kind of feels lackluster right now. Just feels like as you mentioned with WWE, they're kind of in a transition period as they get ready, to put their programming with NXT on the CW, and WWE having their programming on getting out of Fox and putting it on USA and Netflix in the US, and AEW getting their new television deal announced pretty soon. I did want to ask you this question, Lee. There's been some rumors of AEW potentially negotiating a deal with Fox for programming. What do you make of that sort of discussion?
So say that again for everybody.
So there's some news and rumors coming out that the word going around, AEW Shockwave was trademarked recently. And there's been talk in the industry that Fox and AEW might be negotiating a deal. Whether it be on Fox proper, like the Fox network, or it being on FS1 or some of their lower tier cable networks, is still kind of remains to be seen. Because obviously we don't even know if there's a deal in place yet. But that is the rumor coming around that AEW and Fox are negotiating a TV deal.
I think AEW should run and sign it. And I think we saw some of the things that, the Warner Brothers deal, and does it end up on HBO Max? Some of the AEW stuff, we'll see. But they should be running towards Fox, who already know how to produce it. And when you have the alliance between the NFL, like, unfortunately, apparently all the people had to watch Hologram wrestle in Jacksonville this weekend before they lost to the Cleveland Browns, falling to 0-2. Good stuff, Jacksonville.
Doug Peterson is not the solution there. I can tell you that.
No, I kind of want him back in Philly, so they'll lose too. But
Absolutely, yeah.
Sirianni's doing a good job. I just wish they never fired Chip Kelly, to be honest with you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Now the offensive coordinator there at Ohio State, master of the RPO.
Yeah, the master.
So they say.
The master. I think AEW should run. There's a synergy there between the NFL and wrestling already, because wrestling has been on Fox for 5 years, and with the Cons owning the Jaguars and AEW, I just think that there's a natural synergy there, and AEW would be so lucky to be on there.
Yeah.
I don't know that we'd get the same type of programming that we got in the early days of AEW, and that scares me as an AEW fan. But there's some holes in their stuff right now that I'm starting to get concerned about long term. So if I'm AEW, I'm absolutely signing that deal. What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. Even if it's FS1, I think they should take that deal. I think it's been talked quite a bit when it came to WWE's time on Fox and that SmackDown deal and how it's sort of played out. And, you know, it's funny. You kind of look at it from a surface level and you say, well, they were number one on their night when they were on Fox. And from that standpoint, you can look at it as successful. But we've heard from Fox that they wanted like big time viewership. They wanted 4 to 5 million viewers for SmackDown and wanted that program to be sort of the dominant night. And one of the Murdochs mentioned that, the ad rate returns that they were getting from WWE SmackDown, without trying to go too inside baseball, but the ad rates that they were getting in return from SmackDown compared to their audience wasn't what they were sort of hoping for with the SmackDown brand. And so I think you notice as well that Fox didn't really put in a bid to get WWE programming back on their schedule. And I think they're looking at this AEW one saying, hey, we still want pro wrestling, but we're not going to go for the expensive brand that we went with WWE, where we spent all this money and we weren't getting the returns we wanted. We could go to somebody in AEW and spend less for the product, but you assume, based on the trends of and the different audiences for WWE and AEW, that you might be able to get a better return on an AEW deal in terms of ad rates and all that. And plus, you got it in FS1. If they do put it on FS1, that's a channel that needs that sort of programming. Like, they've been relying on football and live sports to kind of keep their channel up and going. Some of their other talk show programming hasn't really hit off like they would hope. So if they put on something like, if it is AEW Shockwave, like what's been trademarked, I think that's something that, Tony Khan should absolutely look into getting that for a TV deal. And it certainly would make it interesting to hear about, Tony Khan and AEW working with Fox. And it shows that Fox is still interested in the wrestling game. As a fan, as somebody that might be listening in, depending on how long the programming is, if it's an hour or 2 hours, it's still more on your plate when it comes to time given to watching a product. But I think that's just kind of the name of the game right now when it comes to all of television, is that you want to get as much content out there and you want to get paid for that content as much as you can. And I think that's what AEW is trying to gun for here, is to try and get a maximum return, maximum value that they can for the programming that they put out. So to answer your question, yes, they should absolutely be, if it is AEW and Fox, they should absolutely doing that. Obviously, if it's Fox proper, that's a big win for AEW, but I doubt it's going to be. I look at it more as an FS1, but even then, I still see that as a win.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think there's any question about it. Do you have any interest in Logan Paul versus Kevin Nash?
Have them in a one-on-one match?
No, not in the ring. Just what's going on social media and the two going back and forth.
I've been getting a kick out of Nash, just saying, if you can't call in the ring, you can't work. And I'm like, Kevin Nash of all people is trying to tell me how to work in a ring, of all people. It sounds like it sounds like word has gotten to Nash about Paul and how he's sort of interacts with people backstage, and it doesn't surprise me. Like, I saw a quote from Matt Camp earlier today, who used to work at WWE for the Bump, and he's been pretty open about what's been happening during his time in WWE. And he said he's heard from people that, you know, some people have had not so great interactions with Logan Paul and others have had great interactions. So it depends on who you ask. So I imagine something kind of went back to Kevin Nash about Logan Paul, and that's why he's kind of putting comments out. And, you know, with a lot of these guys too that do the podcasts, like your Kevin Nash and your Eric Bischoffs and your Jim Cornettes, you know, all these big pro wrestling personalities that do podcasts, a lot of the times they will put out stuff to varying degrees, really just to try and get their names out there in the media sphere, in the news cycle, and get people talking. So, and that's just how they're kind of built in general with pro wrestlers. They're always about trying to get their name in the cycle, get people talking about them so that they can be used for stuff. So that's how I kind of view it. You know, each one's going to do it differently. In this case, Kevin Nash is going after Logan Paul, but we know with the other podcasters, you get your Cornettes and your Bischoffs that will go after AEW, and you know, you get Matt Camp, who will talk about his time in WWE, and you know, there'll be certain WWE fans that will not like what Matt Camp has to say. It goes all around, but I think it's just him trying to, you know, drum up some publicity for himself and get people listening to his podcast.
I did see that. I couldn't believe it. That the most famous wrestler in the world beat Chris Jericho in Mexico. Mistico. Yes. Beat Chris Jericho.
I know. The modern day Hulk Hogan strikes again.
I couldn't believe Jericho lost.
Yeah.
He never loses.
It's just he lost in Mexico of all places too, in the main event. And it was 2 out of 3 falls, so he lost twice technically. Oh, you think Hogan would lose twice in a match, let alone once? I mean, come on. Like, yeah, the modern day Hulk Hogan strikes again, taking a loss to Mistico on CMLL's anniversary show. If there's one positive that I will say, because I know we've been kind of pretty down on the wrestling in WWE and AEW, but I'm somebody that tries to find other stuff and tries to catch up with other things that are going on in the wrestling world to keep me sane, really. And Mexico, CMLL, has been really has had some really good shows. I've not been a lucha guy when I've been getting into wrestling. It just always seemed to escape me. I would only usually watch the Triple Mania shows from AAA, but AAA is just a dumpster fire of a promotion, and I just will not watch them anymore. So CMLL has been filling that void, and so I've been enjoying Mistico. Obviously, some of the AEW wrestlers have been going in there and being a part of the show. I think you'd be surprised how Rocky Romero, of all people, how big of a heel he is there in Mexico and how over he is there. It's just like a totally different world. And it's cool to see guys like Blue Panther and Ultimo Guerrero still wrestling there. And so, having said all that, the finish to Mistico and Jericho wasn't exactly the greatest finish in the world. I thought I had left my little speed limit thing on my video to 0.75 because it was very slow on the finish. But it's cool to see more AEW talent going to CMLL and wrestling in Arena Mexico, and that building has been getting filled up quite a bit too. So I try to catch the matches when I can. Zack Sabre Jr. had a match with Hechicero that was really, really good. I've really been enjoying their matches, the matches that I've been able to catch. So if there's anything if people want to try and find some good wrestling right now and want to try and expand their horizons, I would recommend CMLL. And you can see the modern day Hulk Hogan, Chris Jericho, lose twice in a 2 out of 3 falls match in the main event, of course, at CMLL in Mexico.
What I would do to watch Hogan lose twice in a best 2 of 3 match.
I will say, though, Jericho kind of did look like Hogan in the sense that he was very slow to get to the mat. Like, bumps were not the best when it comes to taking lucha spots. I don't remember Hogan taking a lucha spot at all. And if he did, it was not the greatest lucha spot in the world, I would imagine. So,
yeah, but still,
Modern day Hulk Hogan striking again.
The modern day Hulk Hogan. Gotta love it.
Yes.
Gotta love it, Zach.
Yeah.
Gotta love it. What else is on your mind here before we go?
Nothing too much else. I've just kind of been trying to find other wrestling to watch recently. I've been out of the New Japan sphere for a while. It's just not been really hitting for me. They're very much in a rebuilding spot, but we kind of touched on it a little bit a couple months ago that Zack Sabre Jr. won the G1. And instead of challenging at Wrestle Kingdom, he's going to wrestle at Wrestling Dontaku. And the way that it's kind of lined up right now, based on what I've been seeing from the results, it seems like he might win the IWGP belt at Dontaku, the way that they've gotten it all set up, because after that Dontaku show, he's got a match in the UK. I think it's either against Taichi or Sonata. I think one of those two. I can't imagine him going into the UK after winning the G1, not the IWGP champions. So, so I could see that happening. But again, I would recommend people go watch some CMLL and try and find some matches when you can, because those are some fun matches. It's not going to light the world on fire or anything like that, but you get some cool wrestlers you never seen before. You get to see Hechicero in that environment at Arena Mexico. I know that he's gotten a lot of praise whenever he's come into the States or he's worked in the UK. But otherwise, man, wrestling's kind of in a low period for me anyways right now. And so I'm just trying to find the wrestling that's good. And right now, CMLL, as much as I can with some of the matches, is what's hitting.
No, I would agree. I mean, there are lulls, and I think that's okay. It allows wrestling fans to get away from, we had SummerSlam and Bash at Berlin and Money in the Bank and All In and All Out. And there's just been a lot here in the last, if you go back, 2 months, there's been a lot of shows. Mm-hmm. And I think it allows us here to, as you said, to get into some other wrestling. And I think that's okay. I think that's good because I need a little break. It's like, when I watch the Cowboys on the weekend, it's like I
need a break from them after that or the Saints game.
I needed a little break. And so, I got up and I said, you know what? I'm done with this game. Yeah. When they showed New Orleans first punt with like 8 minutes to go, first punt of the day. I know. I watched them go 6 times down the field and score 6 straight touchdowns on their first 6 possessions. I know it's their first punt of the day.
It's unbelievable.
So I took a break and I'm like, you know what I'm going to do? You know what I'm going to do, Zach?
What are you going to do?
I'm going to sit down and I'm going to watch NASCAR. I'm going to just give myself, I'm going to watch the race, playoff race. My guy, they're at Watkins Glen, not too far from where we are, about 4 hours from Ottawa, down in the Finger Lakes, just, past Syracuse area. Big playoff race. It's like, okay, settle in. Let's go. My guy, Ryan Blaney, crashed on the first, no, not the first turn. It was, I think, about the 4th turn of the first lap, and went from a really, really, really good, like almost advancing to the second round of the playoffs to, oh my God, he might not because he crashed on the first lap. And it was over from there. So my sports Sunday was really good.
There you go.
But I watched the Cowboys and then I watched that and I said, well, there's no point watching the rest of this race. So now what do I do?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Can I quickly mention, I realized this was actually a question we've gotten a couple of times, and maybe we could address it here. We have that new Maple Leaf Pro that's coming in from Scott D'Amore.
Yep.
And the big show happening there in Windsor in October. We haven't really gotten the chance to address that yet. Do you have any sort of thoughts about Maple Leaf Pro and what it could be, where it could lead, and obviously Scott D'Amore returning into wrestling after being let go by TNA?
Well, I guess what I would say to you is I do have a bit of a wait and see attitude because it being out of, like, I understand that it's based out of why it's based out of Windsor. It's easy, for people to fly into Detroit and just cross the border. It's pretty easy for some wrestlers to get in and out of Dodge and not have to, if they go through customs, they'll go through it at the driving border, and not in the airports. And I think sometimes wrestlers can get a little wary of doing bigger shows. So I get why Windsor works on a lot of levels.
Mm-hmm.
I just, as a Canadian, hate that it's in Windsor.
Yeah.
It doesn't really allow a lot of Canadians to be able to go. You got to be a diehard, even if you're from the Toronto area. It's still a 4-hour drive from the Toronto area. You got to be a pretty diehard fan to be able to do that, and that makes me not happy.
Yeah.
But as far as the territory itself, I think I'm pretty fired up to watch it. Like I don't know that. I mean, if you put the Maple Leaf on something, but Scott DeBoer coming back, I think he's learned a lot. He feels like, what's a good example? He feels like a Doug Peterson or somebody like in the CFL, like Wally Buono used to be, like just recycled, and all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, that guy's coached every team. But there's a reason they coach every team, is because they have a ton of experience. And I think Scott DeBoer does.
Mm-hmm.
And I think him leading the charge here excites me for what it could be, because I do think he's been through a lot. I don't agree with everything that's happened, but I think the guy's been through a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And has another chance now to put his stamp on it. And I think that's good. Yeah. What about you?
Yeah, I'm interested to see where it goes. I think it's smart so I've heard that he is trying to angle for some sort of television deal within Canada. And this, I don't know if this would be considered the events that they're doing, kind of putting it together so that they could create like a pilot or something for later on. But I've heard that he's been trying to get a TV deal out of this. I think it's smart if he is trying to do it from that standpoint, to use the Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling banner, the branding, because the big thing that a lot of these TV networks like is legacy and history behind it. And so when you have something like Maple Leaf Pro, where there are people that associate that with the Tunnies back in the day, you get that initial connection.
Which I do. I have that.
Yeah.
So that hits me right in the spot.
Right. And I didn't realize how much footage he had owned as well, because he's been uploading stuff on YouTube as well of old matches. So I think that's also been pretty cool. And yeah, to your point about Windsor as well, on top of all that, you've got DeMora is also based there, and he's had his Border City wrestling promotion in the past be based in Windsor. So he's trying to kind of go back into that area that he's familiar with. It could be interesting if they do end up traveling around, where, you know, they do shows in Toronto or even Ottawa, Montreal, go to these big wrestling markets and try and put on shows. The talent that they've booked here as well is pretty cool. I'm interested in a lot of the talent that's coming to this Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling show. So, I'll be keeping an eye on it. The big thing for me is, how is it going to be booked? And how is it going to make it stand out? Because obviously they're going with the angle that it's a lot of Canadian talent on there, but is it going to be booked like an old school promotion? Are there going to be newer elements, more modern elements of booking in this Maple Leaf Pro? How is DeMora going to approach it? Is it just going to be the same as he did in TNA? I think that's going to be a lot of questions that will need to be answered once we get to the show. And I think it's cool that Morrow is back as the lead announcer.
That's a big thing for them. I think a little credibility right off the hop, right?
Yeah. And look, I enjoy Mauro Ranallo. I thought he started to become a little bit of a parody of himself at the end, with the references he would make. The pop culture references were a little bit too much for me, but he was somebody that could bring energy to a broadcast. You could tell he was invested in the product and pro wrestling and calling moves and all that. So I think it's cool to have him back in the fold, especially at a project like this. So I'm interested to see where it goes. I will be keeping an eye on this pro wrestling show from Scott DeMora, and I'll tell you as well. A bunch of the talents here on the independents and locally are very excited to see where this could go as well, because obviously this is a potential opportunity for them as well to get showcased on a bigger platform. and having more of the Canadian talent be showcased. So,
well, it's massive from that regard.
Yeah.
And I think that's exciting for some of the Canadian wrestlers that are up and coming to just have another platform
Yep.
to be on. And I think for, and for Scott and for, when you're running the promotion, it's exciting that there's a reason guys like London Lightning are going to Calgary and Edmonton, but they're not going to freaking Syracuse and Buffalo because of passport and visa issues and all kinds of stuff that you got to make, it's way more of a hassle than some people think.
Yeah.
And the fact that you wouldn't have to go through that, I think is something that's exciting.
Yeah.
I think and guys would be willing to travel and girls be willing to travel a lot more because it's just not a hassle. You just got to get there and that's okay.
Yep. And Speedball got banned for 5 years because of stuff like that. Because he was trying to work Evolve shows a couple of years ago. Then he got caught for not having a valid passport to get in to work. And it got him banned for 5 years because it's very strict. So this is a great opportunity. And Mark has also talked about that too with C4, trying to get guys, because it's funny because it's like Canadians can't go in the States as much unless they've got a proper visa to work. But guys in the States can come into Canada and work based on the way that the laws are when it comes to the border. And so Mark has mentioned in the past for C4 Wrestling that he likes to bring some of the guys from the States, especially in that Northeast area, to try and give some of the Canadian talent more options to wrestle and have varied opponents as opposed to kind of having the same opponents they would have on the Ontario scene. So It's really cool. This is a really cool project. I am interested to see where it goes.
All right. Well, we'll end on a positive note. How about that, Zach?
I like it. Yeah.
Because some of it wasn't, but that's okay. I think this is a realistic podcast.
Yeah.
And this is where we are. I think there's a really good time in wrestling in the last little bit from WrestleMania, and you had Money in the Bank, and you had Dynasty, which was an incredible show, and the All In and All Out, and SummerSlam, and it's just been very, very busy, like I said. And I think as we wind down, I did read today that there were 15,100 tickets sold for the event in Vancouver, War Games, Survivor Series for WWE. I believe it's on the last day of November 30th. And that there's 1,300 or 1,400 tickets left, and the cheapest is $626 Canadian.
Jeez. It's a lot of money.
So as much as we criticize the WWE, they're making some money.
Yeah, making that dough. But we are the reality check sometimes on this podcast, which let me see if the reality check was also on that list of moves that Jericho got on that letter.
Good. I thought it was going to be the Jerifoil because
yes.
you're my foil. But no, this has been another good episode, Zach. Always good to catch up with you, and we will be catching up with you very, very soon once again. So for Zach McGibbon, I'm Lee Versage. Thanks for listening to This Is Wrestling.